name's Katie. I'm a preschool teacher. I've worked with kids for the last 13 years. Recently, I've become interested in speech pathology, which is a field that specializes in the treatment of communication disorders. I want to start, so I'm going to talk today about how children develop language. So I'm going to tell you about Jeannie. Jeannie was a girl. She was found in isolation. She was abused and neglected and deprived of many things, one of those being language. Her brother and her mother rarely spoke to her, and the only interaction she had with her father were barks and growls. When she was rescued, she was silent. She was only able to recognize her name, and she was tested with the mental ability of a 1-year-old. So during the next few minutes, I'm going to go over what is needed for language development to take place. We'll also go over some of the development that happens during the early years of childhood, and also discuss some of the barriers that affect language development. So I'll start for what is needed for language to take place. Language needs to be heard. Language needs to be around children. They need to be immersed in language. They always need to be listening to it to be able to understand. They also have to make connection and meaning to language. If you want a child to learn what a ball is, we want them to see the ball and hold the ball and experience the ball in order for them to relate that word to the object. There's an article by William O'Grady called How Children Learn Language and What Every Parent Should Know. And he says that no person can learn language by listening to the radio. There's no context. If you haven't heard what's being talked about before, you can't relate what the radio is talking about. Language development requires active, repetitive, complex thinking. The brain is hardwired to learn language, but it needs to be stimulated for it to be acquired. In an article called How Young Children Learn Language, it states that child's brains are changing and learning during language development than any other cognitive ability being worked on at that time. We'll move on to some of the things that are happening during early childhood. Between the ages of birth and 1, children cry to communicate. It's their first form of communication. They have needs that need to be met, so in order for those needs to be met, they're going to let us know by crying. They also coo and start to babble, saying nonsense words, repetitive sounds. They're going to make nonverbal gestures. Again, getting those needs met, making sure that we know that they need something. And they'll also begin those one-word expressions, their first words, usually words that they've already been exposed to. So during the next stage, age 1 to 2, children will start modeling, imitating a lot of object learning. So a lot of pointing, eyes, nose, mouth. Will start learning just objects. A lot of simple books that are out, they'll have little objects for kids to learn, so we start pointing to those for them to learn those. And by this age, they'll average about 50 words. At age 2 to 6, they start learning very quickly. They average about 10 new words a day. This is when they start questioning. So they know that this ball is a ball, but now the ball has a function, and it has a texture, and it has a shape. So they start asking lots of who's, when's, what's, why's in order to learn more about the language that they've learned. They'll also start to learn language rules, grammar, plurals, tenses. In the little cartoon, the little boy says, "I putted the plates on the table." The mother says, "You mean I put the plates on the table?" And the little boy says, "No, I put them on all by myself." This boy is learning those tenses, hasn't quite got them, but they will start doing that at this age. At around age 6, they'll average about a vocabulary of 14,000 words and average about 20 new words a day. Unfortunately, there are barriers that still affect normal language development, those being hearing problems, developmental delays and disorders, attention deficits, and experiences, as with Jeannie. So children need exposure and experience in order to learn language. They follow a natural progression of development if given the right environment for that learning. But there still are barriers that exist that prevent children from learning normal language. I'll leave you with the rest of Jeannie's story. Jeannie started to make progress after she was found. She was able to communicate non-verbally. She was able to start using one word and then putting two words together, and by a year she was able to string 3 words together. But that was as far as it went for Jeannie. She was never able to make meaning of language, and she was never able to learn grammar rules. So it does show that there is a critical period for language development. Thank you.